Okay, so I think we have all our participants on the call already, and it'll be the right time to start. So we honor everybody's time today. Thank you, folks, for joining. My name is Jincy George, and I am a talent management consultant with Arya Consulting. Um, Today, I'm glad to be the host of this webinar. The webinar is titled Leadership Being Present for Your Virtual Teams. Um, a few logistical things before we start. I have put all participants on mute because we have a lot of you on call today, and we don't want all the background noises from home and kids and dogs, which are totally fine. We just want to avoid those background noises, so we've put everybody on mute. However, I would love to have you interact and participate and chime in whenever possible. So on your screen, you would see the chat window and the raise your hand icon. If you could raise your hand right now just to show me you can see it, that'll be great. So great, I have a few of you raising your hand. It should be right on your screen. On the bottom of your screen, you should see the raise your hand icon. Okay. If you are not finding the raise your hand icon, why don't you also use the chat window to send a hello or a hi to everybody? So you can choose all panelists and attendees under 2, and then send a hello or a hi just so we know you can access the chat window. Oh, thank you. So many of you saying hello here. So a lot of you are saying hello to, I see a lot of familiar people in the group, folks I've worked with before. Hi, everybody. I see all of you are sending the message to all panelists. If you can select to all panelists and attendees and try it again, that'll be great, because then everybody on call can see your message, and it'll become more interactive. You can see what others are typing. Great, great. That's amazing. Okay. Okay. Quite an interactive bunch there, right? Okay. So this webinar, the next thing on the agenda, this webinar is being recorded. So a lot of people generally ask me, are we going to send slides? In the recording of the webinar, you will find the slides, and you will also hear me taking you through the slides. So you can access that as soon as the webinar is over. Tomorrow, you will be receiving an email, and that email will have the link to this webinar. Okay, I think with that, we have got all our logistics out of the way, and we are ready to dive right into how, as leaders, can you be present for your virtual teams. To begin with, before I even go to the next slide, I want to talk about the term virtual team here. Now, I understand because of the whole pandemic, and we are all sitting at home and managing things from afar, and therefore the question, how do I manage people who are not sitting right next to my office, and how is it going to change? I want to refer to a Google project that was conducted for over 2 years, and in that project, what they tried to find out was, is managing people virtually the same as managing people who you meet day in and day out? And surprisingly, the result of that survey was, the result of that entire study, over 2 years was, it's not different at all. How you manage your teams when they are present next door is the same way you manage virtual teams. Do you talk to the person in your office every day? Do you say hi, hello, meet them in the hallway? So if you do that in the hallway, now you're just using a Zoom or a Hangout or a Skype or a any other platform that you use today. You are just using that platform to exhibit the same behavior, to say hello, to say hi. Do you do goal setting discussion with your team that sits with you? You do the same discussions with the team that does not sit with you. Do you do accountability conversations with people who come to work? You do the same things with folks who don't come to work and you don't see them often. So it remains the same. So what I did today in today's webinar was to talk about in crisis. We have to remember it's not just people becoming virtual, it's also a moment of crisis. Now, in crisis, what should leadership look like? And what are those best practices we can borrow from world leaders to ensure that we are being that kind of a leader for our teams? Um, so, I found this particular quote by John F. Kennedy, and I thought that's a beautiful quote, and I wanted to put it up for you. So it says, when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity. Now, how many of you are liking it? You can raise your hand. You like the quote. Or how many of you have heard it before? You can tell me in the chat window. Okay, I see hands being raised there. Yeah, the oldest civilization on Earth, one of the oldest civilizations on Earth, talks about crisis being a combination of danger and opportunity. Terry Gillis, who is the president and CEO of Arya Consulting, he has one of his favorite quotes is "Never waste a crisis." And both of these, really strike me. Um, this crisis, the coronavirus pandemic, has a great opportunity on the other side. On one hand, it's like a war, right? Am I going to live through this war is the question everybody has. Is this virus going to affect me? Am I going to die tomorrow? Am I going to be the next one who will get affected? That's a question that plagues everybody today. But on the other hand, what this virus has done is just amazing. This small little fragment of a DNA, a piece that we can't even see, the way it's brought the world together. You see the Italians and the Spanish and the Indians standing in their balconies and singing songs. You see people putting up shows and tributes to healthcare workers. I'm sure in your communities, you are seeing a lot of things done together to help those in need. There is so much happening right now as a result of the pandemic. Not just that. Digital disruption that is happening as a result of this pandemic. We are now doing a webinar virtually as a result of the pandemic. Otherwise, we do these sessions in the classroom in a physical space, but now we are not doing. So digital disruption, innovation in so many areas are happening as a result of the pandemic. Yesterday, I think I received an email from Visa, and the email said that they are taking away the $100 limit on tapping of your credit cards and your debit cards. So now you can tap your card up to $250 in any grocery store that you go to. And I was like, wow. I mean, I've complained about the $100 cap for such a long time, and nothing happened. And look what it took to actually shift that. Was any one of you aware of the Visa change in the Visa rules? Did any one of you see that coming to you in your emails? No? Okay, no hands being raised. So maybe perhaps many of you didn't see it. But all I'm trying to say is, as leaders, what is the opportunity in this crisis? That's my question to all of us today. As leaders, what is the opportunity for us in this crisis? So I invite you to share your thoughts right now in the chat window. What do you think is our opportunity as leaders in this crisis? As our teams split up and go to their own homes and work from homes, what is the opportunity that you see in this entire crisis? So you can use the chat window to respond. And please choose to respond to all panelists and attendees. What is the opportunity in this crisis? If you want to be unmuted, if you raise your hand, I can unmute you, and you can speak if that's more comfortable. Okay, so I have developing different skills of employees, says Laurie Cook. Developing different skills of employees. Absolutely. I think even in my organization, because I need to support virtual teams now, there are so many things I'm doing differently, so many things I'm learning that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn if this hadn't happened. So perfect answer, Laurie. What else? If anyone wants to speak, just raise your hand and I will unmute you and you can share your thoughts with us. Okay, great. I have a few more responses here. Demonstrating to our teams and our communities that we care about them. So that's the opportunity. I have another response here which says families uniting. That is so right. You know, I actually read an article about what if this is not a loss of school time and a loss of time outside? What if this is a time to actually get closer to your family members and actually learn to spend time with each other? So that's a beautiful one. Thank you. I see another one, less micromanagement. If you're not physically there, it is not possible to look over people's shoulder. Applause for that. And thank God for that, right? We've been forced into a less micromanagement kind of a place. You know, we are not able to look over people's shoulder, and we have pinging constantly on someone's Zoom or someone's Hangout or Slack will really make you look like you need a lot of attention. So it's a great opportunity there. Someone just said environment is recouping given this crisis. Yes, and we've all seen that, right? Dolphins are back to the shore, animals are walking the streets of some countries. The environment is probably using this time to, you know, get back in shape, so to say. um, Somebody said people are learning to take it slow. Yes, thank you. People are learning to take it slow. It'll allow people to develop a different type of communication style and tool. Yes, absolutely. You are adding to your toolkit as you start staying away and you start going virtual. Appreciation of smaller things in life, gratitude. Yes, you know, so many posts now on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I don't have to tell you this about how, you know, I'm grateful to have woken up today. I am grateful for what's happening. What is, how am I present in this situation? What can I do to be happy? All of that. Then I have someone else saying a lot of new businesses booming, like online teaching, deliveries, etc. Yes. Oh, you're an intelligent crowd. Yes. In fact, you know, I saw, so I keep getting so many advertisements of, you know, new businesses who are ready to deliver food at your doorstep, and they have a minimum $50 amount. And I'm like, where were these guys before? I had to practically go to the store every week to buy stuff. Um, Absolutely. So thank you for that. There is so much opportunity. And my question to you, leaders on call, is what's the biggest opportunity for leadership in this crisis? And the biggest opportunity is the opportunity to put people first. And that's what's happening, right? We are all thinking about our people. How are we going to protect their jobs? How are we keeping them healthy? What benefits can we give them? The biggest opportunity today for you as leaders is putting your people first. Now, I wanted to, you know, talk about um, two world leaders who are actually teaching us how to be present for your people during this crisis. The first world leader, how many of you have seen her, know her, have read about her? Raise your hands, or in the chat window, yes, no is good. Many of you raising your hands. Okay, many of you raised your hand. So you know her, you've seen her before. This is Jacinda Ardern, and Jacinda is the Prime Minister of New Zealand. You know, I have been mesmerized by the way New Zealand is handling their coronavirus pandemic. They are not just aiming at flattening the curve, they've also almost been able to squash the curve. It's one of the countries where the number of new cases is actually fewer. The number of new cases are actually dwindling day by day, and the number of recoveries are higher than the number of new cases of coronavirus. How did that happen? A lot of folks actually said it is a combination of science and leadership. Now, let me talk about leadership here. Jacinda, New Zealand receives about 4 million people annually as tourists. And even though most of its revenue comes from tourism, Jacinda was bold enough on March 19th, earlier than a lot of other countries across the world. She was the first person to say, we are closing down our borders. She was the first person to say, we are going to start tackling this. We will have a 4-level response alert for the corona pandemic. And she said the 4th level is going to be closing down our borders. And soon enough, she did close down her borders, and she started sending a message out which said, stay home, stay in your bubble, be kind. So what do we actually see from her? We see a couple of things. One is result-driven leadership. She was able to stand up and actually take very difficult calls. In fact, her health minister went out with his family to the beach and on a hike, and she actually publicly called out the health minister and said she would not tolerate this behavior, and if his role was not so important during this crisis, she would have actually ousted him from her cabinet. So she was bold enough, and she was a result-driven leader, which is why New Zealand is doing well. The other characteristic that she shows is her ability to listen, and to listen more. How do we know that? March 19th, she told New Zealand in an Oval Office address, and mind you, they had not had an Oval Office address anytime after 1982. This 2020 was the second time that they were addressing from the Oval Office. And she said that they will have a 4-level response alert. But her high officials came back to her and said, you know what, that's not going to work. You have to lock down immediately, otherwise this is going to spread. And in a week's time, March 23rd, she acted on their counsel, and she actually closed down the borders of New Zealand. Complete close down. People are not even allowed to go out and hunt or go to the beach. There were phone lines activated for people to actually call and tell the police if they saw people outside. So it was that iron fisted. And the last one is visible and empathetic communication. And every day she's been on news conferences talking to New Zealand folks in New Zealand, telling them about what's happening and what are the new numbers. And not just in news conferences, she has been putting up Facebook lives where she's sitting on her bed in a sweatshirt, in her sweats, and she's talking to folks on a Facebook live and giving them updates on what the government is doing. So I'm going to take a pause here. What is striking to you? What is, how are you assimilating this story right now, or this lesson from this particular leader right now? What are you taking from it? Chat window open for your thoughts, ideas, opinions. Okay, I have a very good comment here. She appears to be a real person, not a politician. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, sitting in your sweats on your bed and talking in a Facebook Live, you can pass her off as, the girl next door or an influencer, and she is actually a prime minister. Understanding the situation, not just managing, she actually is empathetic of the situation. Yes. Yes. What else stands out to you? She's bold, decisive, firm, and fair. Absolutely, absolutely. And I know, and the person who's writing this comment, hi to you. So you're right. She's decisive, bold, firm, and fair. I have another comment that says she's authentic. Absolutely. She's visible. Yes, she's visible. She is out there, and showing up every day, not just behind a press release, but her face is on it. So that just bumps the credibility up. Now, let's look at she's considering the people over the economy. That's absolutely right. Because you know what? The lesson is, if your people, come out on the other end of this, grateful, safe, and healthy, the economy will bounce back. The economy will bounce back. It's the people who need leaders right now. That's why, we said put people first. Yes, absolutely. Now, let me talk about another world leader, and I think this face would probably be very familiar to all of you. It's our own prime minister. Now, I am sure there are opinions in the room about his leadership, and my aim and uh, I mean, that's not where I want to go at all. I want all of us to be able to keep our political belief aside for a moment and just look at how Justin Trudeau has been handling this entire crisis. March 15th, when he actually came out in front of the masses to talk about what Canada is doing about the whole coronavirus pandemic, on March 13th, his wife was tested positive for COVID-19. So with his wife who was sick, the entire nation, in a panic, in a frenzy, an unwilling opposition, with all of that happening, Justin Trudeau actually came across as a very bold and very articulate leader during these times. So what can we borrow from his leadership? Because crisis creates and destroys leader. Whatever he did before that, or whatever people's opinions are before that, I think he really did manage this crisis really well so far. So what did he do well? First one, daily, truthful, and credible reports. So with the word daily, I want you to understand there has been regular communication, and he appears visually in front of people. He's visible, so he's on the podium, he's taking questions, he's standing there. So you see him regularly, in your face kind of a communication. um, you know when you are able to see your leader, that gives you a proof of the fact that the goals that are being announced are being delivered, right? So there is I see there is momentum, massive ramp up of the COVID-19 testing, all the economic measures that they are putting into place, which are, some of them are really amazing economic measures. That's great, and I can trust it's happening because I see my leader regularly. His in his speech you can see his confidence, his determination, and you can also in his language hear empathy for Canadians. And the last one, there is no minimization of the effect. I think that stands the same for Jacinda and for Justin. In fact, Jacinda once said New Zealand has 102 cases today. Italy once had 102 cases. So there's no mincing of words. They are out there, no minimization, no baloney. They're giving you as it is. So now, taking a moment again, I want you to tell me, what do you see in his leadership that's, something we can borrow or learn from? Okay, I've received, he's a confident leader, empathetic to his people. Yes, absolutely. And you can see, you can hear that empathy in his language. He's leading by doing what he's asking the country to do. Absolutely. So he visibly does what he's asked. So he's practicing what he preaches. Absolutely. Okay. Okay. So some of you probably are typing, and all right. Okay. So now From both of these two leaders, let's take our lessons and let's kind of summarize those lessons in the last 5 minutes that we have. The first one is leaders in crisis are empathetic and they are compassionate. And for you as leaders who are managing teams, you have to remember your teams are made of people who are at home, sitting with their children, with their pets, having to cook, clean, take care, and listen to children giving them their stories, make them do activities while working, while delivering, while continuing to be accountable to their jobs and their roles. So as a leader, you have to remember that empathy and compassion comes first, business comes second during this pandemic. Somebody sent me a message yesterday, a meme yesterday, and the meme said, no, of course, this is the exact time where I am extremely driven about achieving my deliverables. Yes, people are dying across the world, but oh no, don't worry, I am on top of everything I need to get done. Which is, it's ridiculous to expect people to be constantly achieving their goals and achieving, every shot to be a great shot. It's ridiculous to expect that to happen. So business second, empathy and compassion for people first. Empathy creates a feeling of trust. When people feel a sense of safety, when they feel a sense of trust and empowerment, growth will return. Growth of your businesses will return. Growth of the economy will return. And it's not enough as a leader to just feel empathy. You also need to be expressing that empathy in order to build trust. I mean, if you feel empathy but you're not able to actually articulate it, the other person doesn't really know whether you are being empathetic. Now, a lot of people ask me generally, how do I articulate empathy? I am empathetic. I know what they're going through, but how do I tell them? So here are a few phrases if you're interested, to write it down, or absolutely take a look at the recording that I will send you. Here are a few empathy phrases that you can use. What can I do to help? Very simple, but very powerful. I'm sorry you're experiencing this. How can I support you? I understand your concern. What can we do to turn this around? I know this is difficult. Let's brainstorm a better solution together. Your well being is important to me. Are you comfortable sharing what you're going through? So I'll give you a minute. Apart from these phrases, what else would you like to add to this list? What are the phrases that you use to showcase empathy to your teams? What are your favorite phrases to showcase empathy to people? How can I help? Okay, so the most important for me is how can I help, says Laurie. Thank you, Laurie. Okay, how can I support you? Yeah, is powerful. Absolutely. How can I support you is extremely powerful. I am here for you. Oh, that's a splendid, splendid comment. I am here for you is a great way to show your empathy and show your support to somebody. Great. What about even just starting the conversation by saying, how are you doing? Thanks, Alexandra, for that. How are you doing? Yes, simply asking, how are you doing? I think my boss does a good job of it. She calls me, and the first thing, even after having connected a couple of times in the day, the first thing she says is, so how are you doing? And it's a great feeling for someone to actually ask you that. And for you to say, I don't know, I have two kids on my back, I don't know how I'm doing. So it's a great feeling to be able to share that with someone. Yes. So going back, the first thing as leaders we need to do is be empathetic. Now if somebody says, oh, but my team is virtual, how do I be empathetic? I'm not going to answer that question because it's a common sense question. How are you going to be empathetic if people are virtual? Is a common sense question, isn't it? Okay, moving on. What else do leaders in crisis do? Leaders in crisis focus on the truth. Now, there's a little bit of a brain science here for you. You all know that we have our orbital frontal cortex, which only responds to patterns of behavior. The minute there is a difference in the pattern, the brain actually suddenly panics, and then it immediately starts going crazy because it really needs to grab onto patterns, and that's how it functions. For example, your body, your fingers have learned how to hold a cup. Next time you hold a cup and it's greasy for some reason, it immediately sends signals to your brain that something is wrong with this cup. And this is not how it naturally feels. So the pattern is changed, and therefore the brain suddenly becomes alert and aware and probably goes into problem solving mode because it wants the pattern back. Now, the same thing happens with people. If someone is not telling you the whole truth, or if someone is acting incongruously, that uncertainty, it can fire up errors in your orbital frontal cortex. As leaders, to be able to create a sense of certainty is always rewarding. Now, you will ask, but I don't even know the truth. What am I going to tell them? I don't even know what's the truth. I don't have enough information. So share what you know. Share what you know, share regularly. That's what we saw with Jacinda and Justin. They come forward regularly, whether they have an answer to it or not. Come forward regularly. Share what you know. No one has answers. You don't have answers too. And be vulnerable and strong enough to say that. I don't have answers. Honesty and vulnerability in these times, it makes it less threatening. Now, I can go on because brain science is one of my favorite things to talk about. But if any one of you have heard of David Rock's scarf model, has anyone heard of the scarf model? You can raise your hands. Okay, if you've heard of David Rock's scarf model, he does talk about certainty, which is something that people really scarf. So I will type it in the chat window. It's called the scarf model, like the scarf we wear. And he talks about C being C for certainty. People love and they feel stable, and they feel less threatened if there is certainty of some sort. And our job as leaders is to give the truth as it is, not as we want it to be. Right? Jack Welch spoke about great leaders deal with the world as it is, not as we want it to be. That's exactly what we need to be doing with our teams, which is tell them what the truth looks like. The vulnerability of saying, I don't have any updates for you. All I know is this is what we are doing right now. The vulnerability and honesty of sharing that truth. The next thing that leaders in crisis do, and I wanted to put Peter Drucker over here, and I'm hoping you can see the quote right now. Leadership in crisis focuses on result. I'll give you a minute to read it. Now, if you look at world leaders right now, I'm sure you can immediately think of a couple of world leaders who are doing a great job of making speeches and doing nothing. Can you think of a couple of leaders like that? If you can, just raise your hands. Yep, a lot of you raising your hand at this moment. Yes. So when your teams, whether your teams are virtual or whether they are in front of you, your focus should not move off of results. Yes, we are saying business second, people first. However, people like the certainty of doing what they did before, which is working, delivering, having timelines, having goals to achieve. In fact, the human mind works better when there are short-term and long-term goals to work towards. So as leaders, don't take that away from your people because there is a pandemic. Continue to stress on competency, continue to develop people's competencies, continue to check back and hold people accountable on projects and things that need to be done. Now, balance it out with empathy and maybe stretched deadlines, maybe flexible timelines. However, the work needs to go on, and not because you want to get work done, because people also benefit from that rhythm of getting work done. So focus on results, like Jacinda, like Justin, like a lot of other world leaders. Singapore is doing a great job. Like all those world leaders in this moment, focus on getting results and driving people towards that, because that keeps their mind occupied and geared to work, instead of, how we say, empty mind, devil's workshop. Right now, there's a great chance that if you leave empty minds around, there will be a big darn devil's workshop happening with whatever's going on outside. And strong leaders are strong listeners. How many of you would say you are strong listeners, or you want to raise your hands? Okay, many of you are raising your hands. So kudos to you for being strong listeners. Yes, and strong leaders are strong listeners. Look at Jacinda. March 19th, she said there are 4 levels and the fourth level is going to be lockdown. And in a week's time, she changed that to immediate lockdown, because her strong people, her executives and experts were telling her that that is the right thing to do. As leaders right now, listen to what your experts in your organization are saying. What is HR saying to you? What is your recruitment team telling you? What are your employees telling you at the moment? Listen, and listen more. Be curious and open, and that's one of the skills you need, especially today, because we don't have all the answers. If we had all the answers, we could probably switch from listening to execution, but right now we don't have all the answers. And the last one, leaders in crisis, they trust their people. So I know having your teams go virtual is so difficult, right? But trust your team to work from home. And if you are having difficulty learning how to trust, why don't you look out for Stephen Covey's book, The Speed of Trust, and read the book, because it really does teach you how trust is a bedrock of all relationships at work. Trust your team to work from home. Trust your managers to make sound decisions. You don't have to micromanage them, like Laurie said. You don't have to be peeking over their shoulders constantly. Tell them which decisions are not theirs to take. And trust yourself and your team to innovate and to come up with ideas. You know, keep depositing in the emotional bank account right now during the crisis, because once this is over, that's going to be benefiting you as leaders. Okay, so with that, I do come to the end of this webinar. Like I said, for me, leaders and how they are going to be present for their teams is the same whether they are virtual or whether they are physically present for you. The only additional thing, call, connect more, talk more, but do the same things you do when people are at work with you. Okay. With that, I've come to the end of the webinar. Any questions that I could take at this time? Open for your questions. We also did a lot of webinars. We've been doing a lot of webinars for the, thank you, Susan. Always a pleasure to have you. We've been doing a lot of webinars since I think the end of March. We did a lot of webinars, 3 a week, and so we have a repertoire of webinars and they are recorded. And so if any one of you needs a recording of the webinar, you can go to the ARIA YouTube page and you will see all the webinars recorded there. I will send the recording of this webinar for you tomorrow. Any questions at this time? Okay. If you do have questions and you don't want to ask me right now, here's my email ID. It's jinsi.george@aria.ca. Thank you so much for joining. It was a great group. Thank you for being so interactive, and we will see you in other webinars. Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, Laurie. Thank you. Thanks, Parth. Thanks, Kelly. Thank you.